Hi everyone, if you have been following me on Twitter, then you probably know that I have been reading the whole Twilight series books. And I've had so many people responding to my Twitter tweets, or whatever they call twits or tweeters, whatever. I've had so many people responding to those, so I thought I would just do a video talking about this series as a whole and to give you guys a chance to talk about Twilight, because everybody has been, you know, talking about these books, and I know I'm a bit late on the bandwagon, but I thought I would do a video and then we can all kind of do, if you want to do a video response, that would be great. I'd love to see, you know, what your opinions are. So it's going to be like sort of an interactive thing that everybody can post their opinions on the Twilight series. So I read the books within about a week or so. I read all the 4 books. The order is Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and then Breaking Dawn. And I also went onto the website of Stephenie Meyer and I read the Midnight Sun, which is like the first book from Edward's perspective. So I guess I just want to share my own thoughts on it. I really liked this series. I thought it, you know, it's not exactly a high level of literature. I don't usually read those types of books. Most of the books that I read are nonfiction. I like a lot of history books, things like that. So this kind of young adult fiction is not really what I normally read, but I had a really fun time reading the series, and you know, it's light reading. You can go through it really fast, and the story, the first 3 books, I loved the story. And I guess I'm going to be focusing a lot on the last book, because the last book really changed my opinion of the whole series. So the favorite book of the whole, all 4 of them, for me was definitely New Moon. I really liked the different techniques that the author used, Stephenie Meyer. I really liked the fact that Edward wasn't one of the main characters, because it really made you suffer sort of right along with Bella, you know, that Edward was gone and stuff. So I thought that was really a cool book. That was probably my favorite book of the whole series. I know for a lot of people it's not, because, you know, Edward isn't really a main part of it, but I think that's kind of what made it interesting. The first one was good too. That's kind of introduced you to the story. The third one I thought was okay, Eclipse. I really liked the interplay between Jacob and Edward. I really liked Jacob in that book, because you could definitely see that his character was growing, like he was becoming more mature. He was, you know, he was developing into a werewolf, obviously, but he was definitely maturing as more into like an adult, and I really thought that Jacob was great in that book. So yeah, and I liked him in New Moon too. Just kind of from New Moon to Eclipse, you could kind of see how his character developed. So I really liked Jacob. He was one of my favorite characters. You know, everybody says, oh, there's Team Jacob or there's Team Edward. I'm not sure if I was really Team Edward. I really liked Jacob. I thought he was a much more interesting character, because Edward was so perfect and everything. You know, he was always perfect, and he was so handsome and blah blah blah. And I thought Jacob was a better written character from a writing aspect. You know, he wasn't perfect. You know, he was kind of rough around the edges, and, you know, like, I really liked that aspect of Jacob. So, but it was clear, if you're reading the book, it was clear right from the start that anyway Bella is going to end up with Edward. So that was never really put into question, which I kind of thought that the author could have maybe made that a bit more likely, that she might be choosing Jacob, because it was obvious even in Eclipse that she was going to choose Edward. So that didn't really, I didn't find that was very suspenseful, I guess, because it was obvious to me that she wasn't going to end up with Jacob. So the last book really changed my opinion of the whole series, and I'm going to be talking quite a bit about why I didn't like the last book. I thought the last book was terrible. It just seemed like somebody else completely had written it. The characters were so different from the whole series, like you couldn't even recognize them anymore. Bella had changed so much. Edward was just like a hollow person. It was just a former vision of himself, and it was a vision of his former self, and Jacob just turned into this sort of puppy dog. And I don't know, I really didn't like the last book. I didn't think it was written very well. I didn't like the storyline, how Bella you know, she's like 18 and then she gets married, and of course she has to be a virgin before she ever has sex. And yeah, I thought the storyline was so convoluted, and there was so many elements that came in, like that whole baby that she had. It was such a freak of nature thing. Like, I mean, it just kind of reminded me of like the birthing of an alien, and it was just, how it was written was so disgusting. Like, I didn't even want to read it when she was giving birth to the child, and I just thought that twist in the story was so unnecessary. Like, it just didn't really fit at all, because in the previous books Bella had been sort of like this very, you know, sort of clumsy girl, and she'd said in previous books that she didn't really like children, I think, that much, or that she could give up things for being with Edward. And then in the last book it just seemed like she got everything, you know. There was no more, kind of like the series had built up that it was like a choice, you know, you either get package A or package B, and whatever you chose, there was going to be some sacrifices. So if she chose to be a vampire, you know, she was going to have to leave her family, and she was going to not be able to have children, and she was going to give up her mortal soul. And in the last book it just seemed like the author, Stephenie Meyer, just wanted to give Bella everything, because she ended up getting her family, she ended up getting Edward. Jacob was still around too, you know, because at the end of Eclipse, like, Jacob had taken off and suddenly he just reappeared. And so I thought the last book was really poorly written. Yeah, the whole freak of nature baby was so unrealistic. I mean, how on earth is she even able to get pregnant? I mean, Edward is a vampire. Like, is he even producing sperm? And like, it was so ridiculous. Like, all of a sudden she's pregnant, and then the baby, I hated the baby's name, Renesmee. I thought that was the most ridiculous name, and I thought that was just such a strange plot. Also, what I didn't like is that Bella, all the things that kind of were endearing about Bella before kind of just disappeared. Like, as soon as she became a vampire, which wasn't even very described very well, it just, you know, one day she kind of just woke up and she was a vampire. You know, the whole like the whole sort of, the story had been building up to this, obviously, that she was going to turn into a vampire, and I just thought it was a letdown, because also, like, also how Edward was supposed to, like, she'd been waiting so that Edward would turn her into a vampire, not Carlisle. And then it ended up that Edward just injected her with venom, and I thought that was such anticlimactic moment, because that's kind of what you envision, you know, you expect a vampire, finally that erotic bite, and that definitely didn't happen at all. Also, the sex scenes I thought were ridiculous, because Stephenie Meyer basically stringing the reader along for 3 books, you know, it had always been building up the sexual tension, and then when they finally consummate their relationship after they get married, it ends up being like 2 lines and then fade to black. And it was just, I mean, I realize that it's supposed to be a book for young adults, but I don't think that you should totally ignore the sexual relations, because obviously that was a key element of the book. So I mean, I wasn't expecting pages and pages of detailed description of intercourse, but I think just having constantly those references that, you know, oh, she was having sex with Edward and blah blah blah, but then she never actually described it. I thought that was really a letdown too. Also, I know that Stephenie Meyer is, I think, a Mormon, and that really came through in the book for me. Like, if you look at Bella's life, it's a very, very traditional life. Like, she gets married at 18, she's never had sex, so she's a virgin by marriage, and same with Edward. I mean, he's been a virgin for like 100 years. I mean, what the hell was he doing the whole time? Just jerking off? So they're both virgins when they go into marriage, and then Bella just gives up basically her whole life. She doesn't get any education. She just gets pregnant right away, and it gives up her whole life for her husband. And I thought that was really disappointing, because obviously the most of the readership are going to be teenage girls, and just that kind of message that that's sending out, I thought that was really ridiculous. Like, it just seemed like Bella should have gotten something from it too. I mean, she got Edward, but she had to give up everything, you know, to to follow him. And I think that maybe Stephenie Meyer, maybe that's one of the reasons why in the end she decided to make the ending so happy. Like, there was no compromise. So yeah, Bella didn't really have to give up like the other things on her human life. She was able to keep those, like her family and her soul and all this, and she got a baby and everything. So it just seemed like, I don't know, I liked the series. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was fun to read. You know, it was a real page turner. It was like, I got totally addicted to it. But then like the last book totally changed my mind on the whole series. So it kind of left it on a very bittersweet note. And I'm wondering, like, because they're filming, I think they're filming the first 3 books for sure. So I don't know if they're going to film the last one. If they do film it, I hope that the writers, like the screenwriters, completely change the story, because I thought the last book was awful. It was so poorly written. And oh, also the last, in the end scene, like the whole thing about the Volturi or the Volturi or whatever, how they come, and then it ends up being this big build up, like they're gonna come and you're thinking, oh my god, there's gonna be like a big battle and maybe some people are gonna die, and then it ends up just fizzling out. Like, she introduces all these new characters that you're just thinking, like, why are you even talking about these new characters? Like, they're not interesting. So she kind of backtracks with all this backstory about all these other vampires out there, and then it ends up being like nothing. There's no battle, nothing is lost, there's no sacrifice, and then the Volturi just sort of go back to Volterra and they're like, okay, oops, you know, we made a mistake, blah blah blah. So yeah, really disappointing ending to the series, but the first 3 books I enjoyed. Definitely New Moon was my favorite, because I thought the tension in that book was really good, especially in the beginning when Edward was gone and, you know, Bella was suffering for him and stuff. I thought that was probably the most interesting part of the series, but definitely the last book, huge thumbs down for me. I hated it. So yeah, that's pretty much my opinion of the series, of the Twilight books, and I definitely want to know what you guys think. I want to know, you know, who was your favorite character? Were you more Team Edward or more Team Jacob? Which one was your favorite book? Yeah, just any thoughts that you have, feel free to post a video response talking about it. Just, you know, film yourself rambling, I don't care. Or you can post it in the comments if you don't want to post a video response. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed reading the books, and I'm very keen to know your opinion on them. So yeah, so let's get going on this. So see you guys next time. Bye!